Well folks, here we go again, talking about Young Justice. Now if you've seen my previous videos, you'll already know that I didn't enjoy Season 3. However, with this season, I saw a growing sentiment that it was an improvement. In fact, some people popped into the comments section to tell me as much. So I figured, hey, I got time. Might as well Young Justice it up a bit more. So was it better? Yeah, I think so, but I've got some mixed feelings. Right off the bat, it's clear that Season 4 has undergone some big changes. Mainly, instead of focusing on an incredibly large cast of characters and jumping between them like we're speedrunning Hot Potato, it looks like we're focusing on a core set of people, with each of them getting their own arc. In each case, these characters are dealing with something in their past, specifically with family members they've struggled with for some time or left behind, or general mental health issues. These are ghosts of sorts that they'll need to deal with to grow as people. You might even call them phantoms. As such, the season so far has a fairly strong thematic through line defined by these phantoms, but the devil's in the details, so let's run through each arc and see how they managed to pull this off. First, there's the Miss Martian and Superboy arc. Here they go to Mars for their wedding with Beast Boy in tow. Needless to say, conflicts between the Martians quickly pop up. After all, there have long been issues between the green and white Martians that we've heard a lot about. On top of that, things are worse now than they have been in some time. The previous progressive king was killed, and no one knows who did it. Of course, the Martians are in disarray, and now the team has to get to the bottom of it. One of this arc's biggest strengths is in its tight focus on a core set of characters. Each of them in turn receives development and has their issues explored without much in the way of random side stories or unexpected excursions. There's Beast Boy's complex feelings about the outsiders, where it's this heroic outlet he has trouble pulling himself away from, but also maybe an escape from the trauma he's experienced and his feelings of guilt over failures in the past. Naturally, those feelings come to the surface in this unfamiliar and now dangerous place. Superboy, meanwhile, serves as a likable anchor for Miss Martian, as a partner who clearly wants what's best for her and is trying to make sure he can have a good relationship with her family. Then there's Miss Martian herself, who receives the most time. It's clear that, even though she has love for her parents, they failed her and her brother in some ways, and she's still working through the mess that's left with her. Then there's her complex relationship with her green-skinned sister, with how she blames her sister for how she was treated previously. As the arc goes on, the characters air their grievances. Sometimes they succeed in finding common ground. Other times, they don't. But at the core of this conflict are grown people who are holding onto things from their childhood, who still haven't reconciled with how they were treated by their family in the past. As Miss Martian says to her brother when he asks how she could have left him behind, "I was just a child." Later, her sister echoes that same sentiment. Everyone in her family clearly has reasons for what they did, clearly didn't want things to turn out poorly, and yet they simply weren't able to account for or fix years of turmoil and divide. Really, how could they? But even so, how are these characters going to deal with this in the here and now? This is easily the most emotionally connected I've felt to a Young Justice plot since, well, it's been a long time. I definitely didn't feel this way last season. Characters are given the time they need, conflicts are being developed and shown instead of hinted at or merely talked about. As such, some of these big emotional moments are able to hit. For me, the strongest one came after Superboy's sacrifice. See, each of these episodes has a little scene that plays during the credits. These consist of voiceover and very minimal animation. They're just a low-cost way to get in some world building or more minor characters without eating up time or resources that could be used elsewhere. So, through these first 3 episodes, a pattern is established. Each of these episodes will have this fun little section. But then this happens and we get to episode 4's credits scene and, well, it's just Miss Martian crying. Alone. Grieving the loss of Superboy. It's a great, emotionally raw moment, and I thought it was easily better than anything we got last season. However, this isn't the end of the arc's strengths. No, the world building is pretty darn cool too. Because Mars doesn't just feel like Earth with a different name. Instead, its people's telepathy has a unique impact on outsiders, and it's had a similar impact on their own way of life, history, and systems of government. In particular, I love the focus on how murder is unusual because keeping a secret like that on Mars is gonna be difficult. If the show hadn't brought that up, I probably wouldn't have thought of it, but now that they said it, that's really cool and shows that they considered how this culture would function. But even though I have overall positive feelings about this arc, I still have my fair share of problems. Really, the main one is simple: the presentation. This show, it doesn't look nice. There are lengthy conversations between characters where they just don't emote much, where they look stiff and wooden and off. Beyond that, some of the dialogue felt a bit like it was directed as much at the audience as it was at other characters in the scene. Still though, even though I could have liked this arc a lot more if some things were done differently, it managed to connect with me. So yeah, a job well done. even if there is some obvious room for improvement. But then the show starts changing focus again, because we leave Miss Martian's conflict when she's at her lowest point and move on to Artemis. Even though ideally I would have liked to sit with Miss Martian a bit longer, it does manage to transition over pretty smoothly. After all, Artemis is also grieving Superboy's death, and we get to see a bit of her reaction to his loss. Similarly to Miss Martian though, she's got some family stuff to deal with, but at the same time there's a mystery unfolding. Two members of the Shadows, Onyx and Cassandra, have appeared, claiming that they want to join the hero's side. Is one of them a mole? Both of them? Well, that's what Artemis needs to find out, and she gets Jade to help. Fortunately, this arc represents a sizable improvement in terms of presentation. Now, that's not to say it looks amazing or anything like that. In fact, it still looks pretty meh, but that's a big step up. There's even this neat dark fight scene, which seems like a cool, creative way to animate a comparatively simple fight. On top of that, even if the show's focus has shifted, it's still committing to its current plot. The major players are introduced, and we don't move away from them until there's some developments. Plus, it helps that we're going back to address something from previous seasons. I mean, Artemis and Jade have had issues for seasons in this show, and we're finally getting more time to work through their issues. Additionally, the show manages to expand its focus and world in a way that works fairly well for me with Orphan and her abusive mother. Though adding in more characters could feel out of place or unnecessary, it doesn't because it echoes Artemis's journey as well. After all, she also had a parent who tried to form her into a villain. She can see herself in this kid and hope to give her a better life. Then with Onyx and Cassandra, Artemis's experiences of being trusted or distrusted based on her past influence her judgment here. Basically, everything is relating back to Artemis's struggles as a character. My only complaint is that I didn't like how the conflict between Orphan and her mom wrapped up. Like, yeah, I get that we don't want the kid to kill her mother, no matter how terrible a mother she was. That would be traumatizing, and it's probably best if she doesn't do that. But that doesn't mean that they should just let the mom walk away. Couldn't they at least take her to get arrested? Maybe I've forgotten some tidbit of lore in this universe that would explain why they couldn't do that, but if that is the case, then the show should still have reminded me why they wouldn't be able to arrest her. As it stands currently, this feels like one of those moments where a stupid decision is framed as heroic, only so that the villain can return later with little hassle. But hey, that's 2 arcs down, both of them better than anything in Season 3. Will the show be able to keep this streak up? Will it be able to go back to the glory days? Will it be able to— No, I don't think so. At least not yet. Because this arc, this Zatanna arc, oh boy, it's rough. But let's start with the positives. There's this magic school bus, which has appeared as an Easter egg in past Young Justice seasons, with the same children and driver on board. Obviously, I always took this to be a cute joke and nothing more, which I'm sure it was. But here they give a narrative reason why the bus has appeared like this so many times, as Clarion possesses the bus and goes on a hunt through time and space for a hero who can help him. Taking something that was a simple joke and making it an actual part of the narrative, that's pretty creative and neat. As for other positives, I don't have any. Much like Season 3 before it, this arc attempts to split its focus between too many people. There's Child, the member of Chaos who is trying to take Clarion's position. There's Dr. Fate and Zatanna's dad, who are having their own conflict over trusting others and specifically his daughter's judgment. There's Zatanna, who wants to get her father back and is training 3 metahumans. Then there are the 3 metahumans themselves, each with their own personalities and past experiences that need to get time. But it's incredibly hard for me to connect with because it basically amounts to the show sitting me down and saying, here's this person's issue, and now they've moved past it, and so are we for the time being. That doesn't serve as compelling character development. There's so little in the way of an arc or journey here, so little time actually spent exploring their worlds and perspectives. At first, I honestly thought that I'd missed something. I had to Google and make sure that I just hadn't forgotten about these characters, but no. They're just tossed in, and then we're supposed to care when they succeed against their demons, even though we've had little to no time actually seeing them confront those demons. Once again, Young Justice is speed-running character development. Beyond that, their half-baked internal struggles take away from Zatanna's. As such, she ends up feeling like an accessory in her own arc. Then, in addition to all this, the story is also following up on prior plots now. Specifically, we're seeing more of Miss Martian's grief and Beast Boy's depression, which would be cool, but again, we're dividing our focus and the pacing suffers. In particular, it made it hard for me to connect with Miss Martian when she starts laughing with her sister and she's getting better and improving. I should care about this, but It just feels so rushed. Like, sure, in universe, a decent bit of time has passed, so it makes sense that she might be improving, but it doesn't feel like a couple months has passed because we are barely with her the whole time. Her suffering is being skimmed over. In fact, most everything is being skimmed over. As such, even the character and conflict ideas I like, such as Zatanna convincing Dr. Fate that it's better to split his power among multiple people using a schedule, don't land because they don't get the time and emphasis they deserve. Really, this arc feels like Season 3 all over again. However, these issues pale in comparison to the biggest one, the presentation. While the previous 2 arcs had their problems, this has gone from poor to unbelievable. These are actual, unedited clips from the show. And these aren't rare. No. Guess how much of the final arc consists of this stuff? Well, I calculated it out because that's how I like to spend my free time, and it's a whopping 19.17%. 19%. Basically, a full episode's worth of time is devoted to this. But the presentation isn't the only problem here. The actual content of these slideshows don't do them any favors, because these sections further divide the focus of the arc by going to this backstory for Vandal Savage and explaining his relationship to order and chaos, which could be interesting stuff, but it isn't particularly relevant to the heart of this conflict. If this is setting up some future thing, we should have only received hints about Savage, instead of these lengthy exposition dumps. And the story doesn't even integrate them in with the rest of this arc. Like, this stranger guy is yammering on about Savage's past to Savage, and Savage looks back at him and says, "Why are you telling me what I already know?" Yeah, that's a good question, Savage. Why? I'm sure that something went on behind the scenes to result in this, so I don't want to insult anyone who worked on this show or claim they're lazy or anything like that. It's not my place to say that crap. I don't know what happened, but I will say that this was incredibly boring and frustrating, and if I wasn't making a video on this show, I would have dropped it during this arc. This was kind of the last straw. There was nothing to keep me engaged in these 5 episodes. So yeah, the first half of Young Justice's 4th season. Was it better than Season 3? For the most part, yeah. The first 2 arcs were more focused, I got a good grip on the conflict, I felt some things. Even if I had my issues with them, I had a decent time overall. But then the 3rd arc swoops in and it's just... well, I won't harp on it any longer, but boy, oh boy, was it rough. Then there's a larger problem here, which is that even if I enjoyed some of these stories in and of themselves, I have no idea where the show is actually going anymore. It really feels like it lost the plot at some point. Like, what about the big conflict between the heroes and Savage and the Light? Is that going anywhere? Where was it going in the first place? I don't remember anymore. This show has been ping-ponging all over the place way too long. As an overarching narrative, it's a mess, and I honestly don't expect Young Justice to start picking up the pieces ever again. Maybe it will prove me wrong though, because yeah, I'm going to be talking about the next 13 episodes once they release. I just do that now. I keep coming back. You can't pull me away. Also, you might be wondering why I didn't discuss certain things, and that's because I'm saving them for the next video, since I think they'll be more relevant there. So yeah, I hope you subscribe to see that video when I release it, and that you enjoyed this one. Either way, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good one. Bye-bye for now.